probably got this from you, but there's a story of the flying monk. He said levitation is only possible if he opened his heart completely to God.
Oh, cute.
So I thought you're like to remind me of that story.
That's so good.
And
Well, and it's true, a lot of the people that levitate are the saints, too. Like, if you look at the Catholic saints, a lot of them just start levitating. Like, spontaneously. Because they open their hearts to God, I think, probably. No resistance, right?
Would you say the ego is part of the resistance?
I think so, and it's so lame, because it's like you need your ego to, like, finagle, you know, and, like, operate. Like, we have to have egos so we can, like, you know, eat and get stuff done. I mean, really, if you have no ego, you kind of stop caring that you're going to need to, like, get food and stuff like that. And that's, like, some of the sadhus in India. Like, they just kind of hang out, and then people give them food. And then you're kind of a bum with no ego. So with no ego, you just turn into a bum. But it's, how do you, like, get less ego but not quite a bum? Or should we just all be bums? But if we're all bums, who's going to feed us? Right? The sadhus can only be there because someone has an ego. Like, yeah, super bum. We need, like, a super bum. But yeah, because if nobody has ego and no one cares, I mean, we just, like, all lay down in, like, some blissed out state and then nothing would get done and we'd all die.
There's, like in a magical act, mostly with the right hand path traditions.
Right.
The first thing that you do is invoke God.
That's right.
And it's only in that magical act that, you know, the ego is, your ego, who you are as a person. That's
right. It gets dissolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, through sympathy, because when you invoke God, what are you doing there? You become God. When you're sympathetic to God, I'm always like, why do people bother invoking these angels and goblins and stuff? Just go G-O-D, right? Why not just do that? Like, but it's true. Like, doing that puts you in sympathy with the highest source of it, and that's like the idea of not messing around with like the superpowers, but just going right on to it. And I think that's where the levitation like results, because they just open their heart to the big above. And it's true in the magical act and in most disciplines, like most of the occult like kind of structures that they've made, that's what you do. Everyone thinks it's satanic, but you look at the books, they're using the names of God, people. Okay, read an occult book. Yes, there are satanic people. Satan's just as below, really. I mean, he's in the world with God, so he's part of God. But anyway, if you look at magic books, what they're doing is invoking God. I know, it's weird to think about, but that's actually what's going on. So it's true, that's exactly, the powers come from invocation of God.
Could you expound a little bit more on the geometric associations with evoking, and how does that correlate to city layout or even...
They have so many. I mean, the numbers are so important in all that stuff. And like even you could take the number 4, like with 4 forces. 4 is matter, it's materialization, it's like the physical world. So the fact that there's 4 forces that govern the material plane is like hilarious. But even with the invocations in cities, all those have mantras, and all the mantras have numbers, and all the numbers have a frequency, right? And a frequency is what? Like electromagnetic, and it's a sound that you make, right? So the number is like the note that you're hitting in the octave, right? So you hit the same note, and then you got sympathy, and you can do that through numbers. You know, the number of something, like that's how a lot of magic works, right? You get a certain name, and a name is a number because all the letters add up, right? Every number is a letter, is a sound, is a color, all the same thing. So you use that to go into sympathy. And if you look at like crazy old medieval magic books, like there's a good description of them in Spiritual and Demonic Magic that looks at like Ficino and like Campanella. What were they doing for invocations? They wrote operas and said the names of the planets and the angels. And that was how they made the magic. It was making music using the names. So you got a sound, you got letters, you got numbers. That's how they do it.
Well, And then also with the numbers, isn't like 3 is feminine, 4 is masculine, right? The Empress.
There's a lot of debate about that.
Well, okay, if we take the tarot, right? We've got the
Right.
Empress and then the Emperor.
Right.
It's 3 and 4 is 7.
Sure.
And that's Chariot, which is about navigating through the
Right.
difficulties through.
7, Chariot, is also God, right? Because that comes from the vision of Ezekiel. When the heavens parted, that's Merkabah. So 7 is Merkabah. That's the chariot is the throne that he sits on. So it's movement to higher. When you take 3 plus 4, that equals God. So that's Shiva plus Shakti equals God.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I maybe will be hitting this in another lecture. I'm not recalling right now specifically the syllabus you've got here. But a lot of what you talk about, especially on the political level, makes me think a little bit about, I suppose, you know, the paranoid style and the obsession with conspiracy and
Sure.
Illuminati. That's probably when most people look at, you know, Magick, they think about this dark cabal that's running the world secretly, and no one knows it. And it just comes to mind, you know, I think, David Icke has these sorts of maps of like DC where he's pointing out all these pentagrams or whatever. So, I mean, to what degree do you feel like that this sort of conspiratorial thinking sort of comes out of, you know, this obsession for power?
Sure. Well, that's a really good question, and this is why I have the lecture, okay? Just like there's 2 kinds of yogis, like the ones that want the magical power so they can be invisible and sneak into the ladies' rooms, people will find out about the occult and about magic, and some of them are like, you know, they're having a psychic catastrophe. So you give someone that has a psychic catastrophe, like say the person they love doesn't love them. Then they're like, oh, voodoo, I can do voodoo and make you love me. So it's the same with politics. I think there are like it works. This is the thing. Magic works, right? So when you think, money, 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 I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. You do your mantra, you do your meditation, it works. Voodoo works, okay? But comes at a price, right? And so a lot of these politicians and those kind of rumors that they do these kind of rituals, I mean, there's rituals everywhere. Look at like any kind of political institution is doing rituals all the time. And then some of them might have like heard of Freemasons, so then they try to usurp those because they like think that works, so they can get power through that. And then there's certainly bad guys that find out, and bad women too, that find out that this is a way that they think they can get power. So they'll like try and do it and then like try and put power over like an entire nation of people. But this is the thing. It goes back to Jimi Hendrix, man. Castles made of sand, okay? Castles made of sand. And who are these governments that are doing it? Who do you think is going to get those guys? I'll tell you, it's going to be a prostitute that they're having sex with is going to stick them with their heroin needle. And that's how they're going to go down. These people, they think they have so much power, they're going to go down with the prostitute at their party that they hired because they think they're all powerful, only got the superpower, potency. So yes, I think that is, like, I don't know about the level of conspiracy that people take it to, but I would not doubt for a second there are politicians trying to do rituals to get stuff going on. If there's 14-year-old kids doing it in their bedrooms, you don't think there's politicians doing it? Of course. Of course. They're all playing with the power balls. But the tragedy is, I mean, it's like it works, so it's a trick, right? And then they think that they have this thing, and then this slit happens, then the ball drops. So, and you can see it happen in government with politicians, and I think a lot of those dudes that get involved in some of that ritualistic activity, they think they're almighty and powerful, but look what happens. The whole country that they're running gets destroyed through poverty, or everybody gets tired of being oppressed, and then the people they're oppressing rise up against them and flip it around. That's revolution that's happening everywhere right now, right? What do you guys think about the revolution that's happening against the dictators? How many dictators went down this last year? So many, like more than ever in 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So that's like a perfect example of the castles made of sand, man, you know? Kim Jong-il, okay? What happened to him? You guys know how he died?
Broken heart.
Heart attack! Again! Heart attack! I'm gonna shout it. Broken-hearted. Broken-hearted dictator trying to mess around with ritual magic. So stupid, right? It's funny. It's kind of funny. A little. And I mean, it's like, this is what I get mad at. Like, how many times does this have to happen? How many times do we gotta go around the broken heart circle? You know? I mean, we've known about these yogis that have been around for thousands of years, occult powers. I mean, this is old stuff. Saturn, Uranus, like how many times we gotta do this? Get put in the circle, you know? So we gotta go like Gandhi style and start quitting it with us, right? That's all we can really kind of do. And then hope that like it spreads like a virus, like a contagion. You know, that's all we can really.
I just had this realization when you were talking, because even if you're becoming like Jesus, then you get crucified.
Yeah.
And you get that kind of power, and the demons come at you. So, but I read this study this man did of Native American tribes, and it was of high and low synergy societies. And low synergy societies, we're living in one right now where success is often viewed, if someone is successful, that you are now less, you have less. You know, and we can see it, you know, if your landlord is successful, obviously, you're going to have less.
Right.
But in high synergy societies, that if someone is successful, the entire culture, the tribe or whatever it was, the one who was studying, the whole tribe became successful. And the person who was the most wealthiest in the tribe, who didn't share, was not viewed as the most successful.
They were viewed as a jerk?
They were viewed as a jerk.
That's good. Right.
They would be like, oh yeah, well that guy has many more cows, and we all don't have him.
What's so true, and like it's funny, because like that goes to Jesus, right? Jesus is trying to say, like, you guys can all beat me, right? He wasn't trying to be like, I'm the Jesus superpower, like sitting across from Gorbachev. That's not what he was trying to do. He was trying to like say, like, you guys can all be like Jesus, right? So it's true, like that idea of success as being something that is hoarded, you know, as opposed to something that can empower everybody, because Jesus is trying to like empower everybody, right? By teaching them how to, you know, fish, right? How to do it. But then like people take that, they do, and we'll see someone who's successful, and then we're like, man, I'm broke. They must be powerful. But a good, successful person, I think, is always one that will just like help and show and like, you know, and it's funny, like what was some of the cultures that was an example of like a success one? Did she give examples?
I read this book maybe like 7 years ago. So it's in Abraham Maslow's book, The Farther Reaches of Human Nature.
Oh yeah,
it's
he's so good.
It's not his study, but it was another psychologist study.
Right.
Her name was Barbara. I forgot her last name. But if you look up Abraham Maslow and you look up high and low synergy society, I'm sure it'll come.
In thinking about occult and political powers, one of the obvious things that comes up for me is the obsession that the Third Reich had around the occult.
Yeah.
Hitler was completely obsessed with all of that stuff. But on the counter of that, when I think about some of the people that I've met who are people like someone who built Nokia Grimes, people who landed at Anzio Beach and marched all the way into Berlin with troops and were absolute heroes. What's really interesting is they don't talk about it. They don't want to tell this story. I mean, they did superhuman things. They touched some kind of energy and did things that were so staggering that when you really meet the guys who did that stuff, they never want to talk about it. It's like it's a power, but they don't really looking to kind of revisit.
They don't wave their power in your face.
At all.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a really sacred thing that was terrifying, I think, in some ways, you know.
Well, that's the humility thing, you know, and it's like people with real power they have power on the inside. The reason you can sympathize with the submissives because you've like had to be humiliated at some point. And it's usually through humility that we get the inside tiger happening. And then you can empathize with the below. You don't like, you would never, you know, try to like say I'm powerful when you've truly felt that kind of power, like you say, right? Because it comes through humility. So I think like I think you're right. A lot of people with that true power, they're not like going around saying I'm a superpower. Humility is kind of a good antidote to power too, really, which is kind of like with love, I think, both. And humility is like comes when we like fail, right? Someone takes our power ball away. And then we're like, oh, I have nothing. But so you sometimes have to get to the point where you have nothing, and that's where you figure out where real power is. Like you have to almost go through getting all of your power taken away, like all your power, all your status, all your booyah, all your like bling, mine's all plastic, to like get like taken down to the point where you're like, well, what do I have now? And then you go like Nina Simone style, where you like got my shoes, got my hair, got my heart, you know? And then you're like, oh, that's where my power is, right? And that's like you see it in the people that get submitted, right? Like look at the slaves, the black slaves in America. That's like one of my favorite spots where you can see how they understand what real power, soul power, right? That is like soul power. Because they'll just get their flesh ripped to pieces. They get raped. They get anything you can imagine, horrible torture done to their body. And what do? They just sing together. That's like the raddest thing ever, ever. And how did the civil rights movement happen? Through love. Do you think it was violent force hitting that power? No. One dude went up and was like, I just love you even though you hit me. And like, beat my children, I still love you. And then everyone was like, whoa, that's some Jesus style business. Right? And that's what like made the most progress ever, not like getting it with more force, with more power. And that's how you can see it. It works, right? We can see it work. We can see the fight against that kind of power with love. It does work. Like there's so many good examples of it. All in families and countries and all the way up. So like even though I gave a lot of bad examples of what happens when people like oppress, there's so many hero stories too, and the hero stories are like where you see where love and humility come and kind of vanquish the power.